Today, the simulation hypothesis is often framed through modern thinkers like Nick Bostrom and David Chalmers, who argue that reality itself may be an artificial construct generated by advanced intelligence. Yet this idea did not originate in the age of computers, but in the intellectual firestorm of the Axial Age around 500 before Christ. From the banks of the Ganges to the shores of the Mediterranean, humanity's greatest minds began to suspect that the physical world was not base reality, but a secondary and possibly deceptive layer of existence. Lacking digital language, they spoke instead of divine dreams, cave shadows, and theatrical illusions. When these voices are examined together, a startling truth emerges. The suspicion that we live inside a simulation is one of the oldest questions humanity has ever asked. At number 1, opening this journey with mathematical precision, stands Pythagoras of Samos, often regarded as the very first thinker to suggest that reality itself operates like a computational system. Born around 570 before Christ on the island of Samos and later active until approximately 495 before Christ, Pythagoras traveled extensively through Egypt and Babylonia, where he was initiated into advanced mathematical and astronomical knowledge long before founding his influential school in Croton. His revolutionary insight was the belief that the true nature of the universe is not physical matter, but numbers, meaning the world we perceive is effectively the output of a deeper mathematical code. By observing that musical harmony, planetary motion, and physical proportions all obey strict numerical ratios, he concluded that all things are numbers, implying that matter itself is secondary and derivative. Central to this worldview was the tetractys, a triangular arrangement of 10 points formed by the sequence 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equaling 10, which the Pythagoreans believed was the fount and root of all flowing nature. This figure functioned as a kind of foundational algorithm from which the physical cosmos was generated. The famous concept of the music of the spheres described the universe as a harmonious system, frequency governing celestial bodies through mathematical balance. Even reincarnation, or metempsychosis, was interpreted as the transfer of a numerical soul into new physical interfaces across different lives. For Pythagoras, studying mathematics was the only way to escape a low-resolution version of reality and return to a divine, immaterial base layer. By prioritizing logical proof over sensory evidence, he introduced the radical idea that eternal mathematical truths are more real than their imperfect physical manifestations, laying the groundwork for later simulation-style philosophies. Coming in at number 2, the anonymous sages of the early Upanishads envisioned reality as a divine illusion generated by consciousness itself, presenting one of history's most striking simulation-like worldviews. Writing during the 6th to 5th centuries before Christ, these Indian philosophers described the universe through concepts such as Maya, Leela, and Samsara, long before later thinkers like Adi Shankara systematized these ideas into Advaita Vedanta. Foundational texts, including the Brihadaranyaka and Maitrayana Upanishads, portray the material world not as nothingness, but as a relative reality that appears diverse, despite being rooted in absolute unity. This worldview closely mirrors modern virtual reality, where the environment feels real to participants, but has no independent existence beyond the system that generates it. A powerful metaphor known as the dream of Vishnu, found in the Matsya Purana and related Vedic literature, explains the universe as the dream content of Lord Vishnu as he rests upon cosmic consciousness. Within this dream, Brahma emerges to create worlds, though this creation is simply the unfolding of the dream narrative. Human beings are depicted as characters inside this divine simulation, possessing an Atman that is actually a fragment of the dreamer, obscured by Maya. The Upanishads explain this illusion through two mechanisms: avarana, which conceals the true non-dual reality, and viksepa, which projects the appearance of multiplicity, functioning much like a rendering engine. Liberation, or moksha, occurs when right knowledge reveals the ego as a construct, allowing consciousness to move freely through the illusion, similar to a lucid dreamer who knows they are dreaming. Landing at number 3, Heraclitus of Ephesus approached the idea of a simulated world through constant change, human perception, and an underlying universal code he called the Logos. Living between approximately 535 and 475 before Christ, Heraclitus witnessed a turbulent era shaped by political instability and the rise of the Persian Empire, which deeply influenced his philosophy of flux and struggle. He argued that while a universal logos governs everything, most humans live as though they possess only a private understanding of reality. His famous observation that the awake share one common world while the asleep retreat into their own worlds suggests that ignorance of the logos traps people in a subjective simulation. Heraclitus described the cosmos as an ever-living fire, kindling and extinguishing itself in precise measures, implying a dynamic process rather than a static object. His river analogy, stating that different waters flow for those who step into the same river, illustrates how stability is an illusion created by continuous change. According to Heraclitus, the logos acts as the underlying program that unifies opposites such as life and death, war and peace, and summer and winter. He believed most people remain asleep even while awake, interacting only with surface appearances rather than the governing logic beneath. His doctrine of the identity of opposites shows reality operating through binary tension, which he called strife, a necessary engine of existence rather than a flaw. By defining wisdom as understanding the thought by which all things are steered through all things, Heraclitus framed reality as an informational system guided by an invisible, intelligible code rather than solid matter. At number 4, standing firmly against the idea of change itself, is Parmenides of Elea, the philosopher who argued that the entire world of motion, diversity, and becoming is nothing more than an elaborate illusion. Living between approximately 515 and 450 before Christ, Parmenides presented his ideas in a philosophical poem titled On Nature, where he described a divine revelation delivered by a goddess. She teaches him the distinction between the way of truth and the way of opinion, a division that would permanently reshape Western philosophy. According to the way of truth, only being exists, and this being is singular, eternal, indivisible, and completely unchanging. Because non-being cannot exist or even be thought, Parmenides reasoned that nothing can truly come into existence or pass away, since that would require a transition through nothingness. From this logical foundation, he concluded that all change, movement, birth, death, and plurality belong to the way of opinion, the deceptive world created by human senses. He described ordinary people as two-headed and unskilled, wandering in confusion because they trust their eyes and ears rather than reason. To Parmenides, the senses are unreliable guides that fabricate a false narrative of time and space. True reality, he argued, is like a perfectly complete and well-rounded sphere with no gaps, divisions, or voids. The many objects and events we perceive are merely names and linguistic conventions imposed by mortals. This is an extreme simulation-style claim, asserting that our four-dimensional experience is a flawed mental overlay on a single static reality. By forcing later thinkers like Plato and Aristotle to confront the gap between appearance and reality, Parmenides laid the intellectual groundwork for the idea that humans may be trapped inside a convincing but fundamentally false experiential framework. Coming in at number 5, Anaxarchus of Abdera and his student Monimus the Cynic offered one of the most visually explicit early descriptions of reality as an artificial construction, comparing the world itself to a painted stage set. Active during the 4th century before Christ, Anaxarchus was a companion of Alexander the Great and a follower of the atomist Democritus, earning the nickname Eudaimonakos for his remarkable emotional detachment. According to the historian Sextus Empiricus, both Anaxarchus and Monimus claimed that existing things resemble a scene painting and are similar to impressions experienced in sleep or madness. The Greek term skenographia referred to advanced theatrical techniques that created the illusion of three-dimensional depth on a flat surface. By applying this metaphor to reality itself, Anaxarchus argued that the solidity and depth of the physical world are optical tricks designed to deceive the observer. In modern terms, this suggests a low-dimensional informational structure projected to appear fully real. Monimists pushed this idea even further by declaring that all things are vanity, meaning a vain fancy in which non-existents are mistaken for real entities. Anaxarchus demonstrated this belief dramatically during his execution by Nicocreon of Cyprus, when he was ordered to be crushed in a mortar. As his body was destroyed, he reportedly mocked the tyrant, declaring that only the bag of Anaxarchus was being pounded, not Anaxarchus himself. This extreme detachment rested on the belief that the true self exists outside the material stage, while the body is merely a costume worn within it. This worldview directly inspired Pyrrho, who later founded Pyrrhonism, the most influential skeptical tradition of the ancient world. Landing at number 6, Plato systematized earlier simulation-like ideas into one of the most enduring philosophical models ever written, known as the allegory of the cave. Living from approximately 427 to 347 before Christ, Plato presented this thought experiment in Book 7 of the Republic, describing human beings as prisoners chained inside a cave from birth. These prisoners can only see shadows cast on a wall by objects carried behind them in front of a fire, and because they know nothing else, they mistake these shadows for reality itself. Plato explicitly states that these prisoners are just like us, making the allegory a direct claim about the illusory nature of the sensory world. The shadows represent the everyday reality we experience, while the unseen objects and the fire hint at a higher explanatory level. Beyond the cave exists the sun, symbolizing the form of the good, which illuminates all truth. Plato's theory of forms defines these as perfect, eternal archetypes, while physical objects are merely imperfect copies. A physical circle, for example, is always flawed and temporary, whereas the form of the circle is flawless and timeless. Liberation occurs when a prisoner breaks free, ascends out of the cave, and painfully adjusts to the light of true reality through reason rather than the senses. This closely parallels modern simulation theory, where consciousness is trapped inside a limited interface, mistaking rendered phenomena for ultimate truth. Plato even describes how those who awaken are often rejected or attacked by those who remain inside, illustrating the resistance of an immersive system to disruption. His cave is not simply an educational metaphor, but a full ontological model of simulated perception, one that continues to shape discussions of reality, illusion, and artificial worlds to this day. At number 7, drifting effortlessly between worlds of certainty and illusion, is Zhuangzi, the Taoist sage who introduced the most enduring dream argument in the history of philosophy. Living between approximately 369 and 286 before Christ, Zhuangzi famously recounted how he once dreamt he was a butterfly, fluttering freely and joyfully, completely unaware that he was Zhuangzi. Upon waking, he found himself clearly and unmistakably Zhuangzi again, yet this certainty immediately collapsed into doubt. He asked whether he was a man who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he was a man, a question that dissolves the boundary between reality and illusion. This parable illustrates the Taoist principle of the transformation of things, which holds that all distinctions between states of being are temporary shifts within the same underlying Tao. Zhuangzi argued that while dreaming, a person does not know they are dreaming, and only after waking do they label the prior state as illusion. He then applied this logic to waking life itself, suggesting that one day there will be a great awakening in which we realize that ordinary existence is also a dream. Even revered figures like Confucius, Zhuangzi claimed, are participants in this shared illusion. For him, the self is not a fixed entity, but a fluid process capable of assuming different forms depending on the level of reality being accessed. True wisdom lies in carefree wandering, a state of flowing with the transformations of the simulation rather than resisting them. This perspective anticipates the modern idea of lucid engagement with reality, where certainty is suspended and contentment is found within whatever layer of existence consciousness currently inhabits. Coming in at number 8, the mythical poet Orpheus and the Orphic mystery cults framed human existence as a deliberately imposed prison, introducing one of the earliest moral simulation theories in Western history. Emerging around the 6th century before Christ, Orphism taught that life in the material world is a state of punishment and purification rather than a natural or final condition. According to Orphic myth, the infant god Dionysus was torn apart and devoured by the Titans, after which Zeus destroyed the Titans with lightning. From the ashes of these Titans, humanity was born, inheriting both their sinful nature and a divine spark from Dionysus. This gave rise to the Soma Sema doctrine, which declared that the body is the tomb or prison of the soul. Human beings were seen as dual creatures, trapped between their titanic flesh and their Dionysian divine essence. The material world functioned as a moral simulation designed to cleanse this divine spark through repeated cycles of reincarnation known as metempsychosis. Orphic initiates lived ascetic lives, avoiding bloodshed and practicing vegetarianism to weaken the grip of the body. They buried gold tablets with the dead containing instructions and passwords for navigating the afterlife, effectively serving as a guide for escaping the system. The ultimate Orphic goal was to remember one's celestial origin and return to the starry heaven, becoming divine once more by exiting the illusion of mortal existence. Landing at number 9, the Gnostic thinkers boldly named the architect of the false world, presenting the most explicit ancient blueprint of a simulated prison reality. Although Gnosticism flourished in the first centuries after Christ, its core ideas were a synthesis of much older Platonic, Orphic, and Vedic traditions dating back to around 500 before Christ. The Gnostics taught that the material universe was not created by the true, infinite God known as the monad, but by a lesser being called the demiurge, often identified as Yaldabaoth. This craftsman god created the physical cosmos as an imitation of the divine fullness, or pleroma, but because he lacked true wisdom, his creation was flawed and oppressive. Human beings were believed to contain divine sparks trapped inside dense fleshly bodies engineered by the demiurge and his assistants, the archons. Physical laws, suffering, and ignorance functioned as control mechanisms designed to keep these sparks unaware of their origin. The Gnostics believed the false world was sustained by human passions and ignorance, which fed the demiurge's artificial system. Liberation came through gnosis, an immediate and transformative realization that the world is a deception and that the God ruling it is not the ultimate source. This awakening initiated the reintegration of consciousness back into the infinite divine realm, making Gnosticism one of the clearest ancient parallels to modern prison planet and simulation escape theories. Closing the list at number 10, the ancient Egyptian concept of Resut reveals a civilization that defined ordinary life itself as a kind of sleep and death as the true awakening. Between approximately 1200 and 500 before Christ, Egyptian thinkers developed a view of dreams radically different from modern psychology. They believed dreams were not internal mental events, but objective realities that the dreamer entered and observed. The Egyptian word for dream, resut, literally meant awakening, implying that sleep opened access to a deeper level of existence. In funerary texts such as the Harper Song, one finds the ancient expression that life is but a dream, suggesting that earthly existence is fleeting compared to the eternal reality beyond death. Egyptians believed the soul consisted of multiple components, including the shut or shadow, which represented a person's active presence in the world of the living. Life was understood as preparation for the true awakening in the Duat, the underworld realm where the soul would be judged against the feather of Mat, symbolizing truth and cosmic order. If life was a dream state, then death marked the moment consciousness finally woke and returned to the gods. This worldview profoundly influenced later Greek thinkers and established the enduring idea that humans are sleepers, mistaking a temporary projection for ultimate reality. As we have seen, the core ideas behind the simulation hypothesis, distrust of the senses, a mathematical foundation of reality, and the feeling that life is dreamlike, are not modern inventions, but ancient insights shared by the greatest minds of the Axial Age. Long before computers existed, these thinkers used logic, geometry, divine dreams, and shadow worlds to describe what we now call a synthetic reality. Their work reveals that today's search for proof is simply the continuation of a 2,500-year quest to understand the hidden order steering all things. If this perspective changed how you see reality, comment your thoughts below. Like the video, subscribe for more deep explorations, and thank you for watching.